Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank podcast, the weekly show where members of Team MagicJank get together and talk about the stuff that's going on in Magic the Gathering. Because, you know, we're big old nerds. You're probably a big old nerd. Welcome. Let's have some fun. Let's talk Magic. So my name is Graham. I go by Hammox42 on the internet, and I'm joined by two lovely gentlemen who, if you're a longtime viewer or listener of the show, you're probably familiar. We got Damien F16 in the house. Damien, how's it going, man?
Hey, I'm good. Life is good. Summer's very nice here. The weather's been not bad and just relaxing and playing a lot of Magic. Rotation happened. Everything is right with the world, maybe for another couple weeks until we figure out what the actual best decks are in Standard, and then everybody plays those from now on. But yeah,
fully
doing
solved.
well.
Yeah, excellent.
How about you?
And then we also have Carlo, C. Forever Jr. in the house. Carlo, how's it
Hey
going, man?
yo, what up,
Hello.
everybody?
How's it
It's been a good first little more than a week or 2 weeks or whatever of new Standard. Definitely excited because of rotation, and I'm very excited to talk about Standard today.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's been a lot of fun. So we are going to do a deep dive into Standard. It's happening.
Mhm.
It's going. We're going to get there. But before we do, there's a new product that has actually come out, because of course there is, because it's a week. Therefore, we have a new product, and this one is actually a follow up to a fan favorite product that they came out with at this point, I believe, a couple years ago. Mystery boosters. So if you're not familiar with mystery boosters, it's basically a reprint set that isn't standard legal or modern legal or any of that jazz, unless the cards already are. And it's just a way to get some fun callbacks, some interesting, it's an opportunity to just freely reprint whatever. And it's in these packs that actually kind of function almost like a chaos draft pack, just all in one little package. And they also include playtest cards, which aren't legal at all, but they're reminiscent of, or in some cases, I believe, just straight one for one, playtest like cards that Wizards actually did try to generate, or as a joke they whipped up to just try play around with, and so it's, I don't know, they're a fun product that are usually given out in conventions. And then there's also in the past with the Mystery Booster 1, there actually was a retail release as well, where you could actually buy a box of it, and it was I don't know, everybody loved it. I've heard I didn't hear a single bad thing about the first Mystery Booster.
Well, it like, not to mislead, like for people listening who may not know what Ham's saying here, it is all reprints, but it is curated. It's a curated set. It's meant to be drafted. So the draft format was really good. I don't think I heard a lot of people complain about it, if I recall. That the mystery boosters, everybody enjoyed drafting. The draft experience was very chaotic, of course. Like you said, it's very similar to a chaos draft. But did you draft much of it? I did, I think, 1 or 2 drafts, and I thought it was good, actually. But did you play much of it?
I personally had done quite a bit. And when I mean quite a bit, so if we remember, or at least my recollection of Mystery Booster 1 was, it was originally meant to be a convention exclusive product. So there were 2 different Mystery Booster products they released. One was Convention Edition, and one was like a regular edition. Because I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Mystery Booster came out right as the pandemic started, and the convention stopped. And Wizards still wanted to get that product out to people. So they made it available as a non-convention edition. And there was also a steep price difference between the 2 booster boxes at the time that you would get. Convention edition was worth more because I think there was a higher percentage that you could rip Mana Crypt out of the convention edition boosters than you could the regular mystery boosters. And I could be totally wrong on that, but I understand there was that stark difference between the 2.
And no, I didn't know that.
I do recall the convention version being far more coveted and just having demanding a higher price tag. Yeah, I do.
Now, it's when the Arena Open happened, they did an Arena Open. The first time they did the mystery box Arena Open thing, you were playing for a box of mystery boosters, wasn't it? Or was it some other? I think it was the convention mystery boosters, like the convention version was what they were giving out. And the first time they did that, and it was only available to people in the US the first time. This last time they did it was for just, I think it was just boxes of OTJ the last time. Or I don't know what they were giving away, but it was, or maybe it was MH3.
I think it was MH3, but yeah, it was.
They did two Arena Directs. They did one for Modern Horizons 3, and then another one for 2 OTJ boxes for each event you won.
Okay, so it was both. Yeah, but the first one they did, that first event, was for these mystery booster boxes. I remember people getting them, and It's kind of interesting, but these new ones that they just debuted at Gen Con are a little bit different, and there are some, well, Ham, I don't know, do you want to go over the differences here?
Yeah, we can. So in this particular one, it's similar in its general construction in that it's a ton of reprints, and so we've got just a lot of really powerful cards, and in some cases just fun callbacks that you can get your hands on. But this time around, they decided to have a little bit more fun with it, at least as far as I can tell. And they brought back things like the white border, for example.
Yeah.
And so if you ever wanted a white border Summoners Pact, for example, that's a thing.
Someone out there is going to want it.
So, some people are going to be super jazzed with it. And interestingly enough, the external border of the card, which is normally just black by today's standards, like ever since like 2010, it's been, they've all been black now. It's just white, but what's interesting is the card frame is still a modern card frame. It's not calling back to like, the 7th edition or the 8th edition white borders, like the full frame. It's a modern frame with a white border, which does look kind of odd by all,
They found a way to make white border cards even more hideous. Thank you, Wizards.
Listen, I've said this plenty of times on this podcast that I started playing Magic in 8th edition. I was very used to the white border cards, and so it's definitely a callback for me. And then we're talking about young me figuring out that there were older sets that had white border cards, but the foils only ever came in black border, and so the foils of certain cards were very expensive. So to me, the black bordered foil cards were worth a lot. I mean, back then, and then they just didn't do any more white border cards. And I was like, hey, yo, like, why did we switch this up? But, 14-year-old me had no idea what was going on.
It was the complete opposite for me. When I first played Magic, it was all black bordered cards, and then they printed white border cards. And those were the only cards we could actually buy. It was revised, and Unlimited had just finished its run or whatever. Yeah. And so I did get into white border cards, but for me, like the black border cards were the ones I first played with friends and stuff. And then I always just had this reverence for the black bordered stuff. So I was happy to see the change, but I know a lot of people like it. There's other weird frames here. We've got Future Sight frame, right, coming in this set, which is bizarre. Yeah. Like out of all the frames, it's by far the most weird looking Magic frame. And it was cool to do once upon a time way back in the day, but to bring it back, like, why? Do you guys like these? Or
if there's ever a time to do it, I think in this kind of convention exclusive, really limited run product, sure. I guess you might as well. And some of them are fun. Like, for the video audience, I brought up a Hogak Arisen Necropolis, which got the Future Sight border, which if you're not familiar with this border, I'm going to say the cliche line that everybody says when they see this card, because it's true. It doesn't look like a Magic card. Like, this looks like a card designed for some other game. Like, the top right corner doesn't have the mana cost. It's actually off to the left of the art in a place that honestly isn't really intuitive if you're used to reading a Magic card. Like, you kind of got to, like to this day, when I look at one, whenever I look at these cards, they just, I don't know. It takes a second for me to kind of process what I'm looking at. And the I don't know, the whole frame is just it's formatted differently. And like in the top left, there's a little indicator that shows the card type, which is okay. Like, I don't know why we needed that, but they decided that was important. I don't know. It was a choice, and I think it's a fun relic of the past. It's a fun little nod to a part of the history. So I don't hate seeing it.
Listen,
I don't think some of these are fun.
Young me again, back in the day. I thought that when I saw Future Sight, that it was an indicator that this was how the Magic border was going to look from now on. And me just not comprehending like what was going on. I thought legitimately, hey, here, let's test this border type. Let's see if Magic players like it. And if they do, continue with it. And then, I don't know why, but looking at it, I was like, this looks like that game Duel Masters. And I'm like, this border kind of reminds me of how those card borders were templated. I don't know if y'all ever remember, if y'all remember that game Duel Masters. Those of you who are listening, you probably know what Duel Masters are. And in fact, they printed some proxies with the Duel Master card frame. There's actually like a Black Lotus proxy on a Duel Master card template. Really? So y'all should look that up because it's pretty cool looking, and I don't know if it's value at all, but I know quite a few people with that. And I'm like, why are they trying to make this game look like Duel Masters? But that was back in the, we're talking when Future Sight first came out, and we experienced like Tarmogoyfs that were worth infinite dollars instead of $15 now. So quite a time we've come. But seeing Hogak, you had the image of Hogak up before, and I'm like, oh, sweet, I can open up ban cards that I can't play. Like, this is fine.
Yeah.
But then I remember that Mystery Booster 2, like Mystery Booster 1, is like an 1,800 card set. So like,
yeah, it's huge, right?
The
what are the
idea
odds?
that I'm actually going to open up a Hogak is probably going to be very low.
Yeah.
But there are some pretty cool cards in these Future Sight templates. Specifically, they previewed on the Magic Twitch channel. They showed an Urza, Lord Artificer, in the Vanguard art, which only was available on like Magic Online back in the day. And let me tell you, if there's got to be a card that is worth money, it's this one. Because Urza is a sweet looking card. The Vanguard art is so amazing on this art.
And he's also very playable. He's extremely powerful in Modern. It just takes one card printed to put him back on top of Modern. And, vintage cubes or something being banned. Vintage cubes, you name it. All the cubes have this guy. Yeah, it's for sure.
And when Commander, like high power Commander, people love this stuff.
Oh, right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Commander.
For sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not very partial to these. I don't like the old frame, but again, maybe I'm a purist, maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's just it was such a blip on the radar. I wasn't playing when these cards first came out. I wasn't playing Magic when Future Sight dropped, so I didn't play with these until, I came back to the game and I saw them, in Legacy and stuff. Tombstalker. I remember when that saw a lot of play and I'm like, "Whoa." And then you saw those old Tarmogoyfs and stuff. But I'm not crazy about them, but it's interesting. Again, the cosmetic stuff, hey, go crazy. This is the kind of set where, experiment, do different frames, try different wacky stuff, bring back white borders, sure. But a lot of people are there's been a lot of discussion about moving from the frames to some of the cards they printed. So not only did they reprint cards, technically it's not all reprints, because there are cards that have never been printed before that are in this set, like alchemy cards, like Oracle of the Alpha, which generates a Power 9 into your deck. So when they announce this, everybody's just like, wait, what? How? So I have to have a bunch of... Are you trying to make me buy Magic 30 packs? Is that... Because the set of Power 9 from Magic 30 is still like 10 grand. Don't ask me why. It makes no sense. But it's like, I'm serious. It's thousands of dollars for the Power 9, even out of M30. You guys know, right? So... What are we doing? I'm just going to have to proxy 9 other cards to bring along with me every time I play this guy? Oh my god. It's so... And shuffle them into my deck? Yeah. What do we think here?
I don't necessarily have a problem with them printing this card into like mystery boosters to play. Because the fact is, a lot of people actually had like cubes built where they were actually making copied, like buying fake cards, proxies, with these and putting them in. So it helps to alleviate that problem. The problem I have though with this card, and the same thing is true for some other cards that are in this set and have been printed in the past. When I draft this, how am I putting Power 9 in my deck? Do I have to have the proxies on me to shuffle into my deck? Like, they had an old card in a previous mystery booster. And I think it was Mystery Booster 1, and it was called like Time Sidewalk or something like this.
Yes, the Time
and
Sidewalk.
It was a test card, and it cost 4 and quad blue. It said take an extra turn after this one, and if this card's in your opening hand, you may exile it, create 4 Time Walk cards, and shuffle them in your deck. So so this brings me back to that card when they did this in Mystery Booster 1, and I didn't like it then because. How am I drafting this card, and how am I then putting the cards in the deck? I would have to take a basic land and write Time Walk in it, put it in a sleeve or something, and set it to the side.
I mean, there's a reason these cards were digital only, like not Time Sidewalk, but like Oracle of the Alpha. They're taking cards that they designed specifically for digital Magic because they wanted to show what was possible when we're not confined by paper cards and things like Seeking and Conjure and all this stuff. We can do whatever we want. So sure, they make a card like this that literally conjures other cards out of thin air. And now to print it, like, your points about people playing this, proxying it, I mean, I'm sure you're right. There's people out there who really wanted to play with this in paper, and they did that. But it is weird to give it out to people buying packs. Like, yeah, if I go out deliberately to proxy a card, that's one thing. If I open a pack of Magic cards and I get a card that I can't play because I have to proxy 9 other cards, that's something else entirely, right?
Right.
I'm being forced to
and listen,
I have to do a bunch of work.
They could have printed token Power 9 cards to put specifically into packs, and that would have increased the value of the set.
Oh,
because people would have been searching for those proxy tokens.
Oh yeah,
but tokens of the Power 9, that would be,
did like the good guy thing, and that is print them into oblivion as proxy cards or token cards or whatever. But obviously that would downvalue other products that Wizards currently has.
Yeah, right? I was going to say that would be a slap in the face to everybody who bought M30, right?
Right,
they can't do that.
So I understand it, but it's not a good experience being the player who's in the mystery booster draft. And then opening up this card. Like, this card is fantastic. Totally. It's amazing. We already know from playing in Alchemy and Historic and Timeless if people are playing them on Arena. I just want, like, easy access for the people who are playing the actual booster drafts. Like, being able to actually play the cards you draft. So, totally. I hope... Now, listen, hey, and we aren't sponsored by, like, RK Post or anything like that at all. But RK Post has a mean Power 9... tokens pack that they sell at conventions and online, so you should definitely check that out, because 1, RK Post artwork is fantastic, 2, it's the same size as a Magic card, so you should probably pick them up in case you're planning to play with this card in a cube.
Good to know.
Yeah. But yeah, and it's funny that we were talking, just last time about the draft experience with Bloomburrow and all the Offspring tokens and the need to have specific tokens. And then this shows up. And it's like, let's take that to the extreme. Because I completely agree. The draft is like the biggest challenge with this. If you're doing something constructed, if you really just want to win off of, Battle of Wits in Commander finally, like, if you can blink this a million times and you come prepped with 200, Power 9 tokens ready to go. Yeah. Whatever. Let's get goofy and see if you can pull it off. I'm not mad at that. But in draft,
but when it's foisted upon you and you're not like prepared for it, that's a totally different thing. So we were talking, this is one issue with these cards. Rusco or whatever his name is. It's another one who generates, now I have to have a midnight clock or whatever it is with me. But the other issue with these, and what a lot of people don't remember, people like us who are entrenched Magic players who follow the game and absorb every tidbit of information we can find about the game. A lot of new players are going to see a card like this and think it's a legit card because it's black bordered. Before, these kind of cards would have a silver border. And a lot of people are saying, why didn't they print these Alchemy cards with a silver border? So we know these are not legal in constructed play, like sanctioned play. Because, a lot of Commander cards are legal in Legacy, in other formats. A lot of the Modern Horizons. Like, how do you explain to a new player, like, these cards are legal everywhere. They're from Bloomburrow. Oh, but these are from MH3. They're only legal in Modern da-da-da. And then, there's this Mystery Booster. Yeah, we can draft it the way we do all these other sets, except... Some of these cards you can't play in any constructed format except casual. It's like, what? Wait, and they look the same? Like, surely they should have a silver border or be something different than that acorn or whatever is on there.
Well, and it's funny that Time Sidewalk was also referenced as another card that does that, because with Time Sidewalk, it's one of those playtest cards. Like, you look at it and it looks hand-drawn. It is very clear this is not a real Magic card. Or, real Magic card in quotes. Like, it's very obviously something else. And so to say that, that doesn't fit, that's fine. But the little acorn, so, Rusco and Oracle the Alpha have these little hollow stamps, and there were a couple others as well, like Sanguine Brushstroke I know was included as well. And the acorn stamp, sure, technically that's the thing, but it's such a small detail on the frame
for a
if
new
you're not
player
looking for it. So
anyway,
if a new player's at a convention and cracks one of these and thinks, this is going to be my next commander, this is awesome, it's like about that, you're gonna have a lot of uncomfortable Rule Zero conversations with this.
I would bet that they had Mystery Booster already designed before Infinity came out, because that's not like a too far long ago release to know that like the acorn symbol just didn't work. And the reason I say that is because if you look at the cards that are in Mystery Booster, they don't have the enters text that was in Bloomburrow. So they still have old text within. It says enter the battlefield on all the cards.
Battlefield,
So we know that this was designed well before. they decided they were going to make the change for Bloomburrow or print those cards. So I would bet money that they didn't realize that the acorn symbol was going to be a failure, so it was just continued in this. Maybe those cards were designed or sets were curated around the same time as each other, so they knew what reprints or whatever to put in sets, or what test cards were going to be put in Unfinity and not playable versus what was going to remain as test cards in Mystery Booster 2.
Yeah, and I don't even remember when those cards were like. When was Oracle the Alpha and Rusco and stuff? When did that come out? That was. They
were a while ago now, right?
It was a couple years,
2+ years.
But I think Rusco was. I almost want to say, was that Wilds of Eldraine?
Yeah, that was. I think it was much after, like a long time after the Unhinged or whatever, Unfinity, the last unset.
Yeah, Oracle the Alpha was definitely prior to that. I think that was in conjunction with Dominator United. I think maybe it was one of those. Yeah,
maybe. Either way, it's kind of silly, but
match. But yeah.
Well, and the fact that these are only available at conventions as well is really unfortunate, because a lot of them are going to be worth crazy, crazy money. You can't buy these at retailers. Like no retailers are getting these. You have to go to the conventions. So hey, if you're on the fence about going to a convention, maybe that's what'll tip you over the fence, and that's an opportunity to open some maybe potentially very high value cards, right? So
can I interest you in coming to MagicCon Las Vegas? Where it's going to be the first convention where they're going to have Mystery Booster 2 available.
There's a MagicCon Las Vegas? Please do tell.
They had it at Gen Con, right? Didn't they just have it at Gen Con, I think?
That was Gavin using it as a preview event for it. But it officially launches at MagicCon Las Vegas.
Oh, okay, cool. I did the Gavin drafts in MagicCon last time we were in Vegas last year, and they were awesome. I ended up turning around and selling all those test cards, and a dealer was just like, "Oh yeah, like I'll buy all those because they're these weird, rare cards." So yeah, if you have a chance to try, do a draft.
Yeah, I remember back at MagicCon Philadelphia, the first MagicCon, or something like this. I don't know.
I think it was the first. That was a return after.
It's been a long way since then. But I remember doing the Gavin Unknown event with the test cards where they first showed Mox Poison. And Mox Poison makes a return in Mystery Booster 2 with artwork by Dan Frazier. And I remember lots of the vendors at Philly just buying Mox Poison, the test card, the sticker, for so much money. People were just cashing all of these test cards. There. And I have to imagine the same thing will happen again. But to see the reprint of Mox Poison into this set makes me wonder, okay, now, was it a mistake to not sell the original Mox Poison that had basically no art on it, somewhere, who knows?
It's hilarious.
But this is
love the design
nice that it came back. Yeah.
I genuinely think they could print Mox Poison in some kind of black border set. I think it would be all right.
Modern Horizons 4.
Modern Horizons 4, exactly.
Maybe in Modern Horizons, yeah.
Yeah, this particular one, it's a design that's been floating around for a while, and a lot of people talk about it. It's an artifact for 0 that taps to add 1 mana of any color, but you get 2 poison counters. So if you activate it 5 times, you just die, which,
it's
a
too easy to
Mox. But
it's too easy to get out from under that, though. It's easy to break that card. Like you have things like what's her name? The green-white legendary creature that removes all your counters from yourself. Malira. You have stuff like that to abuse in Modern. Yeah. You could. Yeah, that's too good. I mean, Opal's banned. Amber's still legal, but Amber's probably going to be broken at one point and be banned. But anyway, speaking of formats that are constructed and not limited, let's move to some standard. So we've got the rotation happening. We saw a lot of aggro decks, I think, in the first week, just tons, because they didn't lose very much. We talked about this on the podcast before. We said, what's going to be the big winners and losers, and we knew aggro was not going anywhere, and probably just the most direct, most easy kind of deck to put together and do well with. If you're grinding up the ladder, aggro just does it.
It does what it does.
But then we saw some interesting stuff. Like, I know the last 2 weekends of results were interesting. There's a lot of mid-range, of course, popped up to eat all the aggro decks. So we see a lot of now Golgari mid-range everywhere, white-black mid-range. We saw posting results in the challenges. We saw these Zoraline decks. That Zoraline turns out to be one of the big, power cards from the new set, which a lot of people are like, I wonder. And black and white have such good cards. Black's been one of the best colors in Standard for a long time now. There's mono black decks that are seeing play as well. And there's just like but the weird thing about all these different archetypes that are happening, none of them are identical. None of the lists, like I play against the mono black deck and it's playing like really low to the ground skeleton aggro with a bunch of discard, and then I play another one that's really all in on the discard, then I play another one that's more mid-rangey, and then I play like, and they're all just mono black,
and then you play against the Orzhov one with Nurturing Pixie and the new Viper card, and you're like, wait a second, I thought this was a discard deck, and then you get Vipered.
Yep.
Yeah. The Viper's good. Rottenmouth Viper's another big hit from the set. We've seen Zoraline there. Well, let's jump into it. So we can start with, there's some interesting tournaments results. I know Favretto just brought one to our attention right before we started the podcast here. It's a tournament that just happened in Japan, and it was 462 players. That, to my knowledge, is the biggest tournament we've had since rotation. Because there's been a couple last weekend that were in the hundreds, but I don't think we've had one over 300 or 400 players. This is the biggest, and wacky. Go ahead.
It's crazy. Like, just to back up your point, like there's been no real like consistent version of decks yet, which to me speaks to a healthy post-rotated format where we can brew whatever the hell we want and play it and see how it does. Even though we're in like this extended 3-year standard. But from this tournament that just happened in Japan, 400 some odd players, the winner was Boros Midrange. Not Boros Convoke,
mid-range.
Not mono red, not a super fast deck. In fact, a deck with 0 creatures in the main. Literally. But it plays a bunch of tokens. So we're talking about a deck that takes advantage of planeswalkers like Archangel Elspeth being able to make tokens, Carrot Cake, which is a common that makes a rabbit, Urabrask's Forge, which is a house. But the deck really centers on a new enchantment printed in Bloomburrow called Caretaker's Talent. And we've been seeing Caretaker's Talent be placed in lists, not just in like random token lists. Even some blue-white control lists have been playing Caretaker's Talent recently, at least on the arena ladder. So for those of you listening, Caretaker's Talent is an enchantment, a class. It is 2 colorless and a white. It says whenever one or more tokens you control essentially enter, you draw a card. But it only triggers once each turn. So on your turn and your opponent's turn. If you level it up for 1 white, it says you get to create a copy of a token that you control, which will essentially trigger that first option. And then level 3 for 3 and a white says creature tokens you control get +2/+2. So all of the tokens that are created off of cards like Carrot Cake and Urabrask's Forge and Virtue of Loyalty, which is a powerhouse card by itself, are all going to get buffed. And it has control elements to the deck. It's playing sweepers like Temporary Lockdown and Sunfall, spot removal in Get Lost, Lightning Helix, and Torch the Tower. And let me tell you how important Torch the Tower is in this new aggressive format, because it exiles cards like the Mouse that deals damage to you equal to its power. Fun fact, if you exile those cards, they don't ever deal damage to you equal to their power.
It's true.
Or if you reduce or if you reduce like their power to less than 1. So playing like things like Virtue of Persistence or anything that gives -/, you avoid that issue. So this deck is really like a control deck. Like I know it says mid-range, but this is realistically a control deck.
This is very much
do this.
You're right. It's called, whoever the pilot is here, a Japanese player, Yushi Uzuki, called it Boros mid-range on MTG Melee, but it takes one glance at the actual deck to see we're not playing any creatures, first of all. We're playing tons of removal, tons of spot removal, tons of sweepers, and then just non-creature resilient threats that just keep pumping out creatures, something like Forge and Caretaker's Talent is insane. You mentioned how busted. I saw it so much in the early days of the new format where a lot of people were playing red-white aggro, rabbits, like green-white rabbits. And even in those builds, I was like, wow, that card is ridiculous. Like that is the card that is the whole reason this deck is even in this game right now. I'm like, damn. But the other thing, what I said to a lot of my channel, and I wrote an article about blue-white control, and last week we saw blue-white artifact control do well. And one of the things I thought, man, like all these aggro decks, all these tokens decks, and all these, even the black base decks, the lizards decks, every deck gets absolutely demolished by temporary lockdown. So I love seeing this like mid-range deck. Actually, even though we're making tokens, it doesn't matter. We're still playing main deck lockdown with another one on the board just to deal with all these other decks. It's such a haymaker against so many decks right now. I know I was one of the people, and a couple people in my channel, trying to find the best temporary lockdown deck. Is it blue-white control? Is it blue-white artifacts? This person said, you know what? I'm going to pair that great sweeper. The temporary lockdown and Sunfall are so good against so many of the cards that just came out in the new set. Even things like Dawn's or Hero's Dawn or Dawn something, where it's like instant speed, heroic intervention in white. Things like that just don't even matter, even though they're kind of in there to combat control, but we just have such good exile sweepers right now. I love seeing this deck. I feel like Urabrask's Forge is one of the biggest pains in the butt to deal with in Standard.
One of my favorite
constantly cards. Yeah, and when I played Blue-Eyed Artifacts, one of the reasons people were like, is this deck good? Is it good? And I said, yes. One of the reasons why, nobody's playing Artifact Removal right now. Nobody's playing Brotherhood's End. Nobody's playing a Braid. Those cards are awesome cards, super powerful. Nobody's playing them. So when I would play against Forge, I'm like, damn, we used to use March of Otherworldly Light. We don't have that anymore. We used to, Get Lost doesn't hit it. It's so annoying to deal with. Not mono green, but green black midrange, another very popular deck on the ladder, is playing main deck Frillback, and one of the big reasons is to blow up Lockdown and to kill things like this. Like just having one answer like that, so that you're not totally cold to the Forge, is huge, right? So super sweet.
Other things, for example, that like the green black deck are playing is Terror Sunder, and they're either playing them in the middle of the sideboard as well to help deal with this problem. But if you play against the strict like black X deck, they just don't have artifact removal.
Yeah.
Urabrask Forge just goes unanswered, and it wins the game on itself. But I want to draw attention real quick to the lands that are in this Boros deck, because we've talked about this for a little while. Fountain Port. The most solid land, I think, that's been printed in quite a long time. It's so versatile. It can fit in any number of decks right now that have like two color mana bases. It does everything that you want like this land to do and more. You can sack your tokens and draw a card. You can pay life and make a fish, or you can make a treasure token, so it could actually ramp you. And in this particular deck, it turns my 1/1 rabbit token from Carrot Cake that's got to chump block your 5/5 into I chump block your 5/5 and I draw a card.
And
it also plays like Sunken Citadel from Ixalan in the deck, so that would make that land tap for 2 mana for Fountain Ports. So even though you're playing the game a little bit slower, you are generating so much value just off your land. Imagine having Caretaker's Talent in play, paying 3 mana at the end step, put fish into play, draw a card. Like, hello?
That's busted. Fountain Port with
so good.
with talent just makes it insane. Because there's no shortage of excellent utility lands right now. I know it's really important in these more slow controlling decks to have Field of Ruin or Demolition Field, the one we have remaining, Field of Ruin rotated. Demolition Field, super important. Killing those creature lands. Sweepers are great, but one thing that sweepers can't deal with is Restless Cottage and Restless Reef and these kind of obnoxious, Mishra's Foundry in the monocolored decks and whatever. Yeah. And just having, Demolition Field is really important. And you see the deck still playing 2 Demolition Field here, but 4 Fountain Port. And you can tell, Fountain Port with these 4 Caretaker's Talent is going to bury the opponent in card advantage. Because that's one of the disadvantages of playing something like Talent. It doesn't draw you cards by itself. It does need to be triggered. And so, you play your Carrot Cake, sure. And then they temporarily lock down your board. Okay, now, my enchantment's sitting here. I dumped a bunch of mana into it because it's not cheap to level these things up. How am I triggering it now? And Fountain Port is just the perfect way to trigger it. Like just, free, almost free in your mana base. It's awesome. I love to see it, and of course, I love the removal switching and not playing lay down arms. I know a lot of the white based control decks are playing that, and I'm just like, I don't like this. And the reason it's a fine card, but the sacrifices you have to make to your mana base to play 8 planes in your deck or 9 planes is just like, forget it, you know. And this deck's saying, yeah, you know what, we're not going to do that. I was playing versions of Blue Eye Control, the same thing. But I saw some lists online. They were playing lay down arms, and I'm just like, This deck just says, yeah, we've got the red removal to handle all that. We don't need any cheap, white removal, so we can lean into these colorless, utility lands. It's awesome. So Archangel Elspeth, finally seeing play. I've called this card bad in Standard for the entire time it's been legal, but I know people are gonna be like, look, see, it's great. It's like, I think talent is the reason. Talent is so good. You can even play Elspeth now because it draws you cards when it +1s. Yeah, that's insane.
I feel like Elspeth is fine. It just happens to fit this deck so well. That's it's
so good in this deck.
It's a narrow fit, but man, it fits really nicely. Yep.
So we'll see if red-white Boros Control. Hey, who needs Memory Deluge? See if it has any legs.
Who needs Memory Deluge when you've still got 4 Sunfalls in your deck?
There you go. Exactly.
4 Sunfalls.
But there were some other interesting lists here. The other deck that I immediately saw on the ladder and immediately saw on the challenge results on Magic Online last weekend was Domain. And people were asking me, is Domain going to go anywhere? And I said no, and we all agreed it was not going to go anywhere on the podcast. But no, what Freddo? You want to say?
I was just going to say, do you remember how many podcasts we went through? And I was telling y'all, Domain ain't going nowhere in post rotation.
Yeah,
and I also remember. And I remember some folks, like, even on my Twitch channel, that were like, "There's no way Domain's gonna be garbage. The dual color surveil lands, they're just not good enough." And I'm like, okay. There are cards that put these things back together, and it doesn't matter if I cast Leyline Binding for 3 mana versus 1 mana, because it's still very strong.
Have you played it? Have you played Domain with the Surveil lands?
I have.
Have you played it yet? You have.
Yeah.
So what I found was so interesting. I was kind of surprised how quickly I look at the lists that came out last week. They are identical to the pre-rotation lists. The initial few versions were identical. The only thing that was different was the mana base, and I'm like, really? They can just play it? Yeah, so I started dabbling with like a Niv to Life version, like gaining with the Cornucopias, just gaining a ton of life, and it was really good in the first week against all the aggro decks. But that version, once you start playing with the Surveil lands, you realize like it gives you this bizarre built-in card advantage. So for example, when you have a 7-card hand and you have 2 lands, but they're both Surveil lands, it's like you have 2 lands, but one of them draws you a card when it enters, So you can keep these hands that are not normally keepable in a deck like Domain and still be fine because you have so much card filtering. The cycling lands were great for that, and in the late game you would cycle them, and I miss that still in the late game. Like the Surveil is less powerful in the late game, but I did not fully appreciate how powerful, and I knew those Surveil lands were good when they were spoiled. I said these are going to see play for sure, not even just post rotation, but in other formats, and they're busted in Modern. You can fetch them up with Lorien Revealed and all that kind of stuff. But even in Standard, now that cycling lands are gone, suddenly these Surveil lands have a chance to shine, and they didn't have a chance to shine under the shadow of those tri-lands. Now it's like I get to play with them, and I start understand. I'm like, wow, this is so powerful. Like being able to draw those or surveil those cards, it just gives the deck such a built-in consistency. That is what's making Domain still not only viable, but one of the best decks in Standard. Like Domain is still super powerful. It's putting up results in almost every big tournament that I look at when I'm looking at top 8s and stuff like that. What do you guys think of Domain right now and its position in the metagame? Is it as good as these other decks? Is it still, do the Surveil lands really just, which version do you like the best?
I mean, I personally like the Niv to Life versions better. I guess that matters more when the format is more aggressive, as opposed to the format now moving towards more mid-range strategies where like your traditional like Sunfall version is better. So I'm curious where that goes, because we all know once the mid-range decks become like sort of solidified, you pave the way for the control decks to re-enter the meta to be able to answer the mid-range decks. And so in that case, then maybe the Niftalite version would be better against the control decks than your current version of Domain. So it's going to be interesting how this all plays out. And I feel like what's going to happen at this moment is we're going to take another like 2 weeks to figure out the format. It's going to settle. And then you're going to start seeing decks from a month ago re-enter to try to combat what the control decks are doing.
Cyclical,
and that's a healthy format.
That's how it should be.
If that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think even things like, Bant Toxic, I remember when I was playing Nip to Life and going, like that. I'm surprised I'm not seeing that. That seems really well positioned right now. But I guess they're bad against the aggro decks. Maybe, Bant's not an option, but Domain's good. I'm already moving off it towards the controlling deck, so it's really interesting to see this Boros control deck do well. I'm not surprised. But what other decks? We've got a couple other spicy ones. Which ones do you guys want to touch on? Because this Japanese tournament has a very different top 8 than what I've been seeing on the ladder and stuff. Like, I've been seeing a lot of lizards. I've been seeing tons of mid-range, tons of green-black and white-black mid-range, just all over the place. Everybody's playing with the 2-mana black enchantment that, you level it up and then it drains them for 2. Everybody's playing with the snake and playing a bunch of, carrot cakes and novice inspectors.
It's so interesting to see how starkly different the metagame is on Magic Online and Arena, because if you take a look, it's fun too, because the only real results that we have to go off of are Magic Online challenges and leagues. Not purposely ignoring like the larger events that are happening, because you obviously want to look at that too, because they'll make their way into both of those platforms. Magic Online is shaping Standard. And that could be a hot take or not, but Magic Online is shaping Standard through the decks that are doing significantly well in the challenges, or that are posting results and league results. Taking a look at one of the recent challenge winners from over this last weekend at the time of recording, there was an Abzan mid-range deck that won a challenge, and here I am like, I thought only the 2-color decks can really do that well in any type of a tournament, because we have worse mana bases, but they're still good. But nope, here's a player who is playing Deep Cavern Bats and Mosswood Dread Knights and Glissa Sunslayer, which is still a banger of a card. But then playing Zorleen and Biza, and cards with double white pips like Season of the Burrow to deal with a variety of threats. While playing the same like removal suite essentially as Golgari does. Season the Burrow, fun fact, lets you animate almost all the creatures in this deck for the 3 paw prints, and it also enables you to exile like 2 things, give your opponent 2 cards, make a 1/1 token. It's very versatile. And let's talk about a deck that's also playing Innkeeper's Talent with Planeswalkers. Because the Golgari deck is taking advantage of this with 1-shot kills with Vraska. But this particular deck doesn't play Vraska at all. It plays Liliana of the Veils and Nissa Ascended Animus and Archangel Elsbeth. All cards in which you can automatically ultimate when Innkeeper's Talent is on its final level and you play them. Fun fact, Archangel Elsbeth can reanimate just about every creature in this deck if it comes down and is able to ultimate. So it's pretty cool. 25 lander, somehow still playing 3 Fabled Passages in this deck. I have like a love-hate relationship with that card. But this deck won a challenge. It looks really sweet to play. It's got additional threats in the sideboard. It's playing things like Temporary Lockdown, like Terra Sunder, like Pest Control, to still deal with Boros Convoke, which is very still prevalent in this format. It's probably still the number 1 aggro deck outside of the mouse deck that is trying to 1-shot kill you. But it's very good. It looks a really sweet list. I'm excited to try that.
Yeah, I think there's some sweet ones. I like the Abzan deck was one of them. Yeah, I saw, like I mentioned, the Artifacts one. This Japanese tournament has a bunch of wild ones in the top 8. There's Azorius Prowess with 20 lands and Haughty Djinn and Monastery Mentor. There's a bunch of these tempo decks now popping up. It's funny though. Like you're right that the Magic Online metagame absolutely influences the Arena metagame. There is no Arena metagame. It has to follow real tournament results, and because Arena, we've talked about this before. There's no data. We don't have access. Nobody knows what the actual numbers of any of these decks are and the win rates behind any of them. We have to just go by Magic Online results, and it's so funny how quickly if I stream, on a Monday, the decks from the challenge the day before are all that I see on the ladder. Like suddenly, at Diamond or above, I see a lot of people just playing straight up, just card for card copies of whatever did well in these challenges over the weekend. So yeah, you're right. It absolutely does inform it. But that said, even on Magic Online, people are it's the same 80 players every week, just playing over and over and over. And even they are not sure about the metagame yet. I can't wait. It drives me crazy that WotC doesn't time the RCQ season to rotation, because the fact of the matter is, no matter what we think is good, it isn't actually the true picture of Standard until the pro community, the grinders, turn that competitive lens on top of the format. So as soon as RCQ season changes from Modern to Standard, then we're going to see which decks are really good. Then we're going to see, the RCQs and what's taking them down and stuff. That'll be great. I cannot wait. There's already some contenders, but it's like we're scouts scouting a training camp, and we're seeing all these pro picks they're all giving their all, and some of them look really good. Oh, there's potential. That one has great potential. Yep. And then come draft time, and when your nose gets put to the grindstone and the pro community starts really testing this, it'll be really interesting to see which of these archetypes survive, what they look like after they get the competitive treatment applied to them. But right now, you're right, it's magical Christmas land. Everybody's just experimenting. So many different lists, people are trying different stuff. Every tournament seems like it's got a different metagame almost. It's crazy. So really great time to play Standard. What are some other decks that you've been playing Jund combo? Have you been messing with the Roots? I played the Roots deck. I was like, oh my god, this is Four Color Legends. I can't do it.
He's been wrecking some stuff on the ladder, let me tell you.
I have been playing the Roots deck, and in fact, I can't quit. I love it. I'm completely addicted.
Yeah.
I can't stop. I'm sorry.
We got him, y'all. We got him.
Yep, it happened. It's funny, actually. Somebody in my chat mentioned, Damien was playing this the other day, and it wasn't. It was funny. I think the way they said it wasn't doing it for him, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry that it wasn't working. I'm killing it, and they were like, oh no, he won a ton. He just didn't enjoy it.
I did, yeah. It did end up winning. It was so weird though, because it was you feel like you're losing, and you just go, oh wait, there's a Roots, or oh, I top decked a Tivar, and then you do the first thing, and then that triggers the next thing, and you're like, okay, and then can I keep going? Oh yeah, I can. Oh, now I have a 1-drop, and I have this.
I love that. I love that motion of just looking at the deck, looking at the board, and accepting I am 100% dead on board unless I top deck this one card. Because when it happens, it's so beautiful. So if you're not familiar with this
combo deck,
it's a combo deck. It feels it is a combo combo deck.
You just have this auto win, right?
Yep. It is all in. And so it's leveraging Insidious Roots, which, if you're not familiar, it's an enchantment for 2 for Murders of Karlov Manor. It's an uncommon, funnily enough. You would think an effect like this would at least be rare, but it's not. And it makes all your creature tokens mana dorks. And as whenever one or more creatures leaves your graveyard, you make an 0/1 plant, and then you put a counter on all your plants. And so it works with Tyvar Jubilant Brawler, because that mills, it can reanimate stuff, and then it also gives all of your tokens and all other creatures that you have with abilities haste. And so the way that the trick is, and the reason that we're talking about this now, because you'll notice none of those cards are new. And so why are we bringing it up now? Well, Osteomancer Adept is a card that came out in Bloomburrow that I genuinely think is a beast. It's 2/2 Death Touch for 2, which the stats alone, it can hang. And this is a deck that reanimates. So if you have to trade this for somebody's 3-drop on an attack, oh, boo-hoo. You're going to bring it right back. You don't mind.
Yeah.
But again, it has this ability where you tap it, and then until end of turn, you can cast creature spells from your graveyard. But you have to forage in addition to paying their cost. Well, foraging is sacrificing a food or exiling 3 cards. If this sounds familiar, this is Underworld Breach.
It is.
Underworld Breach in Standard for creatures, specifically. And so the idea behind the deck is you mill super aggressively, And then you're making these plants as you're reanimating stuff, and those plants can tap for mana the turn they enter as long as Tyvar's around, and you can just recast stuff from your graveyard over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah.
And you're playing a critical mass of 1-mana creatures in order to... Once you have a Tyvar in play, every 1-mana creature is 0 mana because they tap... Like the token that's created off the creature taps for mana, and you can just essentially play infinite 1-drop creatures until you have something big enough to finish them with. What are we killing them with? It's like the red backup card, or it's like...
So the way that I've been using it is the Valdaran Thrillseeker, the backup card allows you to fling. Because as you're doing this, you have your plants are all getting bigger, and so whatever the biggest one is usually ends the game at least at a 22-22. And the trick is to actually use Honest Rutstein.
That's right. Yeah.
You use Honest Rutstein. Not Rutstein, Rutstein. There you go. Use Honest Rutstein to bring the Thrillseeker back to your hand. You then play the Thrillseeker, because when you're using the Osteomancer, they all have finality counters on them. And so the trick is you drop the Thrillseeker, you back up the plant, fling the plant. If that's not enough, you fling the Thrillseeker, then reanimate it off Osteomancer, back up the second plant, fling that. And we're talking like 50 damage usually.
So many flings.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's a silly combo deck, but it checks all the right boxes for me. It's Golgari. It's using my graveyard. It's doing just absolute combo nonsense. It's my happy place.
There's no way that Ham hawks like graveyard-based decks. No way.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Graveyard-based combo decks?
I know you like graveyard-based decks, but I know you're not a big fan of like the really convoluted complex. Like, it reminds me of Slogurk decks. They were so convoluted, and the loops and all the other stuff you could do, and you're just like, there's so many decision trees because everything either looks at more cards or has an activated ability, or there's cost reductions and like all this other stuff. Like this deck too. Like once you have 2 roots in play, you just literally do the math and go, oh yeah, now I can just like go off and do these things. But like every card you surveil, like when you're not going off and you're trying to get there, it's like you have to. There's all these decisions. Everything lets you filter and when do I exile this thing to what is that guy called? The green. There's that green 1-drop that exiles from the graveyard to put a counter on something. Is really good. Rubble Belt.
Maverick.
The Maverick. Yeah. He, knowing when to exile him for the counter to trigger to keep the chain going, and like you've got to put in a lot of work to learn the lines, but.
Oh, absolutely. But this one, for some reason, felt pretty natural. It almost felt like the last time I had a deck like this where I personally just kind of clicked into the zone and it fit was the Underworld Breach, or not Underworld Breach, the Reenact the Crime Breach the Multiverse.
Oh, yeah.
It reminds me kind of that, whereas if you know the lines, if you know what matters in each moment, you can line it up and it clicks. And for some reason, there's something about every now and then a combo deck like that will just get its hooks in me, and that's that.
It is powerful. It is linear though, and that's my fear with those kind of decks. It was like the Breach combo deck. I love that deck too, but dedicated graveyard hate could make you fold. That deck could still plow through it unless it was like a Rest in Peace or something. But can this deck weather the graveyard hate? I know you're bringing in Haywire Mites out of the board.
I was just about to mention it because
even temporary lockdown wrecks you, right? It's like.
Well, you would think, but the thing is, in my sideboard, I've got, in my main deck, I'm running 2 Canker Blooms, and I've got 4 Haywire Mites in the side, and I bring them in all the time. And I find Haywire Mites are the key, because temporary lockdown, Rest in Peace, all that jazz, being able to just, drop this, pop it immediately, and Honest Rutstein makes it free, which is kind of nuts. So it opens up a whole other avenue for you. So I found Haywire Mite MVP out of the sideboard. It's incredible. As long as you have that, as long as that's in the mix, honestly, you'd be surprised how well you can weather a lot of the storms out there.
I'm surprised you're not playing in the main deck. Actually, they were the best cards for me. I almost was like, I should just play 2 of these in the main deck or something. I'm bringing them in every single match. But
I don't hate that idea, honestly. Yeah, I might.
It's a sweet deck.
Before we're all said and done. Yeah.
Combos.
I adore this deck, and one of the things I absolutely love about it is that I don't think. I mean, the one build that I'm currently running has 2 Agatha's Soul Cauldron in the sideboard, and I'm honestly not planning on running them much. I might not have them anymore because the synergies are powerful, but it's kind of not necessary. It was my finding on it. But the entire 75 in paper right now is worth about $50.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
And so I actually did order a whole bunch of singles. Like shortly after the first day, I was like, this deck is amazing.
Emma's ready to go to a standard showdown near you.
Oh,
So heads up, everybody. If you're in the southern Michigan area,
Tour championships are belonging to Ham Hocks at the moment.
You know, yeah, exactly. if you're in the greater Detroit area, so if you're chilling in Ann Arbor or something and looking, you know, there's a non-zero chance I might roll in with this deck because I absolutely love it.
Nice.
And I've even the green screen's not going to show up for the video, folks. I've already printed off some plant tokens.
Nice. Is that
Plants
vs. Zombies?
Yeah, pea shooter from Plants vs. Zombies. I printed off 40 of these bad boys. I am ready. Let's go.
40. He's got big dreams, big plans.
Oh, hey,
Love
I'm not
to
going
hear
to be caught without enough. That's for sure. So
no.
Anyway,
that's awesome. Yeah,
yes,
sweet deck.
It's
another example of the crazy stuff that's happening in Standard right now. Like, there's so many different decks out there. But
and I can't, you know, it's not a tournament challenge or anything, but I played with it on the ladder for 2 days straight on my stream. 40 matches, best of 3 matches. I've got a 70% win rate with it. I walked from Plat 4 right into Mythic with it. Like, it's
nice.
I think it's real. I think the deck is solid, and I don't think people realize it yet. And so,
well, and people aren't like I said, like people aren't playing dedicated graveyard hate or anything because there's no like. You don't know what you're going to play against. You can't really put dedicated anything hate in your sideboard because you're not.
Not yet.
It's just the same reason artifacts are good too. You know, if you like, I was playing one of the challenges last weekend was taken down by a blue-white artifacts deck in the hands of a well-known MTGO grinder, Ignotus. He plays a lot of blue-white control, but he was playing the artifacts deck with Simpson, and I've talked about that deck before, and I've written about it and stuff. It's very powerful and very hard to deal with. Many decks cannot get artifacts off the board very reliably. Like, they have 1 or 2. Now, I believe this weekend, in the last challenge, I saw Willie Edel on MTGO playing a domain list with 4 green sorcery from Bloomburrow that says, like, it's almost like pick your poison. It's like destroy an enchantment. Yeah, paw patch. 4 of them in the main deck. And I'm like, what? Like, that card is starting to pick up because of the found or the Urabrask's Forge and all the artifacts and enchantments. The level up enchantments are everywhere. Like, almost like the blue one, the white one, the black one. Like, they're all seeing play. Having something like this in the main, God, it looks so bad. Next to pick your poison, it's just like 2 mana for this, you know, but instant speed, and it's just flexible enough that it's always going to hit something.
Green.
Yeah, kill Atraxa, crazy. Kill some huge thing, like it's or blow up enchantment is huge right now.
Yeah, I honestly think Paw Patch Formation is probably the best Broken Wings we've ever seen. I mean, that far's pretty slow, but still, like,
it's amazing. Anyway, it doesn't hit.
Yeah,
it doesn't hit artifacts, but hitting temporary lockdown and stuff. Anyway, what I'm saying, like, we're seeing more of these narrow answers start seeing play. I mean, Get Lost sees a bunch of play, but again, none of these things hit artifacts. So Simpson ends up running away with the game every time it's in play and can't be dealt with. And then the removal ends up lining up really nicely. I've been pretty happy with things like spring-loaded Saw Blades and even Glass Casket, which is whatever. And then you're playing, you know, your Glyph Bridge and all that stuff. And that deck is really powerful as well. But again, a deck like the Jund Graveyard combo deck where it is linear, and if people want to demolish you, they can. Like, there's a... Cease Desist is legal. And you know, the split card that blows up all the artifacts. There's like a green one that costs 4, and here, have some bears, I think, or something. Blow up all your stuff. There's like... Fade is 3 mana. Is it Fade from History is 4 mana?
Fade
the bears
is 4 mana, and it's the one that makes the bear. And I've actually seen some people using...
Fade into Antiquity,
funnily enough, I've seen Fade from History in a couple of Ygra decks. People are running Ygra and Fade from History to blow up all the creatures except Ygra and then swing for lethal. It's one of those combos. I don't know if there's a competitive deck that can use that as a top end, but it's cool when it pops. Let me tell you what. Yeah. Not a lot of people are playing these kind of cards. I mean, I don't know if I haven't seen the deck you're talking about there, but most people are not playing stuff that blows up all the artifacts. But if an artifacts deck ever becomes viable, it's going to be problems because people are going to start bringing in stuff like a Braid and Brotherhood's End and those green cards. And but right now, everybody's playing a lot of powerful enchantments, so hey, as long as my cards don't get hit by enchantment removal, like Get Lost and the Paw Patch Formation and all this stuff, then we Gucci. You know, I like that. Absolutely. I like that artifacts deck. It is nice. So we'll see. That's another one that's been doing well, but then I haven't seen it much this weekend. Last weekend it was doing okay. A lot of Convoke. Oh, yeah? Oh, just that artifact deck. I know Simulacrum Synthesizer a ton of people have been building around it since it came out because the raw power level on that card is absolutely just insane.
It's crazy.
And I like that call out. This might be its time, just because people aren't coming ready for it.
None of it rotated, right? I mean,
yeah, pretty much.
It's not solid. Really. Yeah. I have to tell you though, I have seen two things really quick. One, I've seen blue-white control decks playing the Simulacrum Synthesizer package. Recently. That's been a thing on the arena ladder. Because I was like, why am I getting like Sunfold? Why are they casting like Eternal Wanderer? And then the same person is also playing Simulacrum Synthesizer and
I tried it.
Random Artifacts. And I'm like, this is like a mixture of that. I've seen quite a bit of that.
It was a list from last week in Japan. The last big tournament they had last week. It's like 111 players. Yeah. Somebody got third place with this like blue-white control deck, temporary lockdown, Sunfalls, no more lies, 3 steps. 3 steps is nice. 3 steps is the one card that has synergy because you can go, end step, make a synthesizer, whatever. But I tried it and it was not good. It's two very disparate. Like it's like a square hole and you're jamming a round hole, square peg. It's was weird.
But I also, played, and me and my Doppelgang shenanigans. Those of you who've been listening have listened to my Doppelgang BS stories for a couple of podcasts now. And so today I was at my standard showdown at my LGS because we got the new Cowboy Bebop cards. So everybody's coming to play standard again because they want these cool cards. And so I show up round 1, and here I am playing. It's just a Temur ramp deck. I'm playing, me, Atali, Vaultborn Tyrant, Carnosaur,
Oh, heck yeah.
We're only really playing blue for actually Doppelgang. So I'm playing against this blue-white artifacts player. He's got 3 Simulacrum Synthesizers in play. I'm like, how do I win this game? So he rats the board. He casts Sunfall. And I have exactly enough mana for Doppelgang X = 3, and I happen to draw a Doppelgang, and I cast them on all of the synthesizers. And I had so many synthesizer triggers and so many constructs in play.
And they were massive.
And
they were probably huge.
So they untap, and they play Sunfall, and they exile all of my constructs I just made. Don't you know I drew Ancient Cornucopia and made 3 more constructs because it's an artifact that costs 3?
Nice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man,
that's hilarious.
This Simulacrum Synthesizer card is pretty good.
When you draw the one other artifact in your deck, that was great. But really, Doppelgang is busted. Doppelgang is another one of those cards that every domain deck I play, I'm like, should I be playing just one Doppelgang?
I see all of you out there who are listening. And all of you who are watching, let me tell you, I would have never thought in a million years, in my first 2 new weeks of a brand new format, that I saw so many people on Arena playing Temur Doppelgang. And I'm not saying that it was our community that made the deck and put it out there, but literally, I loaded up Arena the first brand new standard format day, and I played against 3 Temur Doppelgang decks in a row. And I was
stream snipers. They're stream sniping you.
What do y'all
trying
do?
To line up with you on the ladder.
What do y'all do?
I didn't see any of that. I didn't see any domain. I saw so much aggro. That's all I saw. And black discard and lizards. Yeah. Red black lizards. I was like, oh, it's a deck. It was kind of good actually. That's another deck that we could talk about. But
I've been playing a lot of lizards. Not biased at all, but it was the first. So y'all will see this on Thursday. I got a thing where I'm going to be writing for Cool Stuff Inc. now. And the first article that I wrote on is on Red Black Lizards. How we were able to take that deck and start climbing the ladder. Very consistent, low to the ground, 3 mana cost maximum in your deck. Liliana of the Veil is...
Ooh.
Liliana of the Veil, and I probably said this the last couple podcasts, is like the card. It's the card in the discard decks. This card is much more powerful than it was pre-rotation. It houses any ramp deck out there. You just play Liliana of the Veil and you plus. The ramp decks can't deal with it. It houses domain. It's such a good card on 3. And if your opponent can't deal with it, they probably lose. And I'm not even talking about like the ultimate, like separate things into 2 piles. That's great and all. The plus and the minus, being able to control the board while you are playing an aggro deck, is so good.
Interesting.
And the Lizards deck puts lots of pressure on you, dealing incremental damage over time, whether that's with Hired Claw or Iridescent Vine Lasher, or if you're able to land like Gev. Gev is probably one of my favorite like 2-drop creatures that you could play right now, because any creature you play post Gev is money.
Right.
You know, it's so
It's
good.
got Vine Lasher. It's got.
If you could pick up a deck, and let's say you just got into Standard with Bloomburrow, and there was a deck that you needed to pick up, I would recommend this one, because you can take all of the cards that you've just drafted or sealed or bought out of a box, put a lot of them together, grab the old existing Rakdos mana base that's there, and go to town. Because it is so fun.
It's got great reach, this deck. It can kill. It just needs to get in a few points of damage with a couple 1 or 2 drops, and then once you're at like 12 or 13 life, it can just kill you with pings and ETB triggers and stuff. So yeah, it's been very good, but I haven't seen a lot of Liliana in those decks. I would have thought they wouldn't go for a non-creature card in the main deck maybe, but in the sideboard or something. Liliana, what you were saying is interesting. I found that it is good in the dedicated discard decks, but there's a bizarre phenomenon that kept happening. I was like 7-1 against black white and black green mid range and mono black and stuff on as I was playing this Niv to Life deck, and on my way through them, a lot of the games would end up with basically neither of us having cards and being in a top deck war, because their entire deck is designed to obviously make you discard as much as possible. They got the 3-drop lizard that thought seizes you is insane. That's seen play in a bunch of decks, speaking of lizards. But that thing, they've got the enchant hopeless nightmare that comes down. They've got Liliana, and very quickly by like turn 6 or whatever, neither of us have any cards. And then it gets really weird. And I'm telling my chat, this is the problem with playing dedicated discard decks. Half your deck doesn't do anything anymore when you're top decking. It would be like, I would top deck, something. I would play it. They would top deck Duress, or they would top deck like a discard spell, and they'd just be like, I'll play this and sack the Nightmare to try and get value or whatever. Like Liliana was eating both of our hands, and then if I could just Leyline Binding it or whatever, we both end up in top deck mode. But I feel like those discard decks, as soon as you get to top deck mode, the other deck always has a better draw than they do, like a better outs than they do, because half their outs are discard spells that don't do anything anymore. You know what I mean? Like Lily is really bad off the top in the late game when you're both trying to top deck. She just like doesn't actually, maybe she eats a creature or whatever, but so it's been really interesting. You're right, she's better than she was, but these discard decks, I wonder how deep they can go. I mean, now I'm seeing Liliana kind of taking a back seat in the Golgari decks to other planeswalkers, but playing her with the enchantment is ridiculous. Like if you can play her with the green talent, and just immediately ultimate, that's very good.
Oh my goodness.
But like even in the lists I've seen, they're leaning toward Vraska, of course, just the insta win, but they still got like 1 or 2 Lilianas and stuff, but it's just weird. I feel like, go ahead.
Well, I think you're touching on something that's really, really important here. A lot of these combos and a lot of these synergies that we talk about, I see a lot of people building decks that are all in on just the one thing. And I think that's probably problematic. Like if your deck is designed to do the Innkeeper's Talent Vraska thing, okay, that's great, but what happens if the talent gets blown up before Vraska shows up?
That's a byproduct of
anything else, and like, and I think, and a lot of these decks that we're talking about, that are seeing competitive success, they have a good mid-range plan. They happen to have Innkeeper's Talent, and they happen to have Planeswalkers. So if it happens, great, but it's not the point,
But that is the testing. The testing that's happening right now is us figuring that out. That is the metagame evolving. You have to start by going to the extreme. Okay, let's see how good Lizards is if we just go all in on Lizards, or discard, or the graveyard deck. And then as we start going, you know what? We don't need this Agatha Soul Cauldron because it's just win more. The core's already solid. We shave that. Oh, we don't need this Liliana. We shave that because we have all this discard and now it's like too much discard. Or maybe we keep Liliana, we shave something else, but you know what I'm saying. As these decks evolve, you're going to see them become less all in and more balanced and kind of well-rounded so that they don't just get hosed by the opponent's sideboard cards or whatever it is, right? So yeah, really interesting to see, but that's how you test. Like if I want to try, is this spell gyre or whatever going to be good? I start with 4 of them. I need to find out if the card's
Sure,
good. You got to start with going all in, and then you dial it back from there, right? So it'll be really interesting to see again as it evolves where these decks go, because they will get honed. They're still rough, a lot of them, but
yeah, well, and what actually to kind of get back to the lizard deck, I've been shocked at how well the all-in lizard deck works. Like it looks, I don't know. I expected a couple of the lizards to see play in like other aggro decks. I didn't expect a full-on all-in standard lizard deck to be viable, but turns out, like the pieces are all there. I mean, also Hired Claw. I did not like during previews. I did not like key in on that one, but it's real, man. This card is nuts. Yeah,
very good.
Anyway.
I wonder, and again, this is the drawback of sets like Bloomburrow, where all these lizards are just from this one set, and as the standard evolves and new sets get added, how many great lizards are going to be printed in Duskmourn and in the next set and stuff? It's like, I think the time to play these decks is now, because as standard grows, those kind of kindred decks are going to fall by the wayside. They just won't get as many new pieces, or maybe they evolve into some hybrid of it's not just lizards. We're not all in on lizards anymore, but it's like a red-black aggro deck. We've still got Vine Lasher or whatever it is, but we'll see. But I think this is when you're going to see these all like it's just 22 lizards or whatever kind of decks, right? Rabbits is the same, mice is the same.
Rabbits and mice,
like I've seen a couple of these aggro decks, and they look interesting. There's some powerful stuff happening there, but the whole time I'm just thinking these decks all get wrecked by temporary lockdown. I just want to be playing.
Maybe they will continue in the lore where some of these creature types find their way through omen paths onto other planes. Eventually we will get the wacky races. And the wacky races is supposed to be a whole story going through all of the different omen paths over the course of a year, right? I know it's not really called wacky races, but hello, the previews spoke wacky races to me.
It is what it is.
Death race.
Death
race
so eventually characters will run into like different versions of themselves, and then you'll be able to play 2 different types of Gevs. Gev
I can't
on
wait.
Bloomburrow and Gev driving a Ferrari. Like,
of course.
Hello, I'm sure we are going to get something like that. There's no way like Marchesa would randomly appear in Thunder Junction as a creature with a cow person hat on.
Of course not. That'd be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well,
there are no borders anymore. Yeah.
We've already seen precedent for like a character who they just printed getting a brand new treatment. Like we saw that with Malcolm, we saw that with Breaches. Like they do that stuff nowadays. So who knows?
Yeah.
There might be a new Gev in Duskmourn. I don't know. Why even wait? Like this is like
like, so who knows? Maybe you're right.
Anyway.
Maybe we'll get more lizards and bats and rats and mice and raccoons.
Bats and rats? I would be shocked. I mean, actually,
bats are pretty common.
Rats are super common, but I'm thinking just the aesthetic of Duskmourn being kind of that horror thing. Like bats and rats just sort of fit. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't there kind of it's a moth motif that the bad guy's using? That was but.
But I'm talking the more those are going to be fine. But the more niche decks are just like the frogs. I haven't seen frogs do anything. Mice, rabbits,
I've tried with frogs, but
bats. I don't know if you could Zoraline deck. It's just one bat. It's not really a bats deck, but lizards, rabbits, and mice have definitely. I've seen decent looking versions of those decks. White, green rabbits. I've seen some pretty interesting lists
recently,
and the mice deck and stuff. But the other ones like frogs and raccoons and bats and stuff. Birds, otters. Otters
man.
Actually, I have seen some otters. I have seen a blue-red Otter's Prowess deck that looked kind of interesting. I can't say everything that was in it, but the white class enchantment was definitely in it, and the Lord and stuff. But it's out there. But
I've tinkered with otters. They're fun. I don't think it. My build's probably not competitive.
There's a really fast.
It's fun.
Otters deck that's out there.
Yeah, super low to the ground.
Yeah.
But and Limited's been fun. I guess you guys talked. I wasn't here last week. You guys talked about Limited.
We did talk Limited, but if you haven't,
I've been enjoying it.
Kind of thoughts that you want to jump in real quick? By all means,
not really. No, I've been drafting a bunch. I always do the first week or whatever, and it's been good, but not an amazing draft set. Like you could tell right away. I mean, even during spoilers, we were kind of assuming it was going to be like Ravnica, where it's very on rails, and you kind of got to find your lane very quickly and commit to that archetype. So it's okay, but it's definitely less like interesting because of that and stuff. And so I don't know. I enjoy it, and the flavor's good. The art's beautiful or whatever. But I was just going to say, the limited format didn't really grab me this time around. I don't think it's very exceptional at all. Maybe like a 6 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10. But anyway, I'm sure there's other people who love it. But
yeah, we had a really in-depth discussion about it last week.
Oh yeah,
and okay. I remember that during the podcast, and I would say I'm pretty vocal. I would say last week I wasn't as vocal as I normally was because we had Headology on, who, in my opinion, is like limited expert. And so I was just taking everything in from the discussion we had. And nice. What did we record on? I don't know what day we recorded last week. Who knows? Maybe it was on Thursday or something like this.
It was something like that.
Or Friday. It was like Thursday, an off day. And yeah. I woke up the next morning after recording the podcast. I made my coffee. I entered the arena qualifier thing, said 20 play-in points, and don't you know I get 6 wins like that, playing based off of all of that advice we just had on the previous podcast.
Let's go.
Like choice of like selection, like obviously having a strong Selesnya deck. And we were talking about how Selesnya was like the top of all of the data points on being like the best decks that exist in Limited. And so yeah, I qualified, but then played, as of this recording, played yesterday, and I had a sick nasty was it Selesnya deck again? I had another Selesnya deck. We got like we got 3 wins right away. I had to start stream very early in the morning because they only let you build your deck between 6 and 8 a.m. PST. And I'm normally a nighttime streamer, just FYI for y'all listening. And so I started up stream because we had the MTGO Creator Showdown, and I had a sick nasty Golgari deck that literally I was playing like 6 rares and mythics in,
Nice.
And so I had to stop the good progress on the Arena Championship qualifier to go play the MTGO event. Went 1 and 2. It's double a limb, so we got knocked out. Then I went back to the qualifier and lost all my luck. I was so sad.
Oh no!
But it was okay. It was a fun experience because it was free gems because I used play-in points to get into it.
Right.
But definitely to the point of everything that we discussed last week. And if y'all want to listen to what we discussed last week, make sure to click that to check it out. I'm not saying that Bloomburrow is a 10 out of 10 draft format either, or limited format either. I have to say, though, it is much more enjoyable to play than OTJ was with infinite bombs.
I agree.
And
Sealed
I think
especially.
Yeah, and I wasn't a fan of Karlov Manor either. And I would say that it ranks higher than that, in my opinion. It's enjoyable. It still is very clear to me after playing a lot more limited, though, that you have to stick to whatever creature type. If you're drafting, you got to stick to that creature type. If you don't, if you deviate, it's very hard for you to pick up game wins. Sealed is a different story. Sealed, you play with what you got. But if you're drafting and you start drafting rabbits and then all of a sudden start drafting frogs, you're in for a hard time progressing forward because you are sending so many different signals, both to the left and right of you, in terms of the cards that are going to get back to you. And then you have to play against the people who drafted correctly. And you're going to have a hard time.
Your cards are worse. They're going to be just worse if you're straddling the line between 2 archetypes. Like, all of your cards get worse. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, OTJ wasn't like that. OTJ was draft as many bombs as possible and see if you can win.
But even other sets, like Modern Horizons 3 we just drafted was great. It shows what can be done. And those Modern Horizons sets are so good at that, where they have a bunch of different archetypes, but they bleed into each other. So you're able to straddle the line. You've got great mana fixing, so you can splash around. Splashing in Bloomburrow, forget it. That is a death trap. I would recommend never. Like, you open a crazy bomb and then you're in green base and maybe you have, something to fix. But the vast majority of decks should not be splashing. But when I'm drafting and playing, so many decks are playing 3 colors or more. And I'm like, oh my God, I think it's insane.
I splashed once, one time. And it was because I already had a Yigra and I was drafting a really aggressive black-green, and Vren showed up late. And I was like, okay, you're worth splashing for, but
that's
only
good.
you. And it was my only blue card in the whole deck. I was like,
you sounded so repentant. You're like, okay, I have a confession to make.
Like,
I'm so sorry.
I
did splash once.
But I did, in fact, splash once. But you're right. I found in the handful of drafts that I did in the the drafts where I like really stuck to my guns, picked gold cards early, and like would try to send as many signals as I could down the line. Like rats are closed, everybody. Rats are closed. All the rats are stopping at me.
Yeah.
In those tables, rats or bats or whatever I was on, I found pack 3. I was able to scoop a lot up because nobody else was grabbing them. I've never been more sensitive and aware of draft signals than I have been with this set.
Yeah,
because the archetypes are just so narrow. Yeah,
and very clear signals. One or two of them aren't open. It does make it unfortunate that some of them are weaker than others, and that's another issue. And even though the data, like I think the first couple of weeks of data is almost useless. It's got to be at least 2 weeks in. But now, now that we're mentioning data, Untapped.gg is launching their own data collecting service alongside 17 Lands, which is a big deal because, again, the more data we have, the better. And I'm not sure, but I dare say Untapped probably has more users than 17 Lands does because it encompasses all of Constructed. So I don't use 17 Lands because I'm not a limited only streamer. I probably should anyway. I draft enough and play enough limited, but I do use Untapped. And so every draft now that I do, that data is going to be going to them. So maybe we'll have a little bit better data, at least a bigger sample size, which is always good. But it's so weird the first week. Yeah, people are just like, this is the best deck. And then people really like skew their perception toward that initial burst of data. Oh, green, white's the best 2 colors. Blue is unplayable. And then you hear people who are really good at drafting play blue, and they're like, I'm kicking ass with blue. And it's like, oh, really? Because I heard it was a terrible color. Well, yeah, when everybody thinks that, and then I get to wheel everything, it's great.
Yes.
I have this great blue-green frogs deck or blue-white, But I don't know, it's still weird. I mean, even the best, like, rats deck, I think is just still on par with, like, a mediocre green-white deck or red-white deck or red-green-black deck or whatever. So it's unfortunate. That's why I feel like, again, this format kind of missed a little bit for me. It's like maybe a 6.5 out of 10 instead of better, but I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, we'll have a new set soon, so we don't have to worry about it too much.
This is the case.
Coming soon.
Yeah, in like a month. But is there anything else we want to touch on before we move on? I do have a question of the week if it's that time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know what? I think it just might be. I got to gush about my root deck, so I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I needed to.
Okay, before we wrap it up, let me say. Okay, one question before the actual question of the week. This is to wrap up Standard. Huge tournament this weekend. Tons of money on the line. You have an invite. Standard, Constructed. What deck are you playing? For Redo, he knows already. No. Ham, I know you're gonna play Junk, right?
I had to play.
I'm bringing my dumb combo deck. Yeah.
Yeah. As much as I would love to play like my Temur Doppelgang deck in an event, I would say if I wanted to play a deck that was very consistent and I was playing for money,
win at all costs
this weekend, I'm slamming a Golgari midrange deck because I think it is probably the most consistent midrange deck you could play in at the moment. It's got tons of threats to fight against the aggressive builds, such as Glissa Sunslayer. I told you it's a banger card. You get to play Planeswalkers like Liliana and Vraska, and Innkeeper's Talent kicks ass. Even if I was to play like Deep Cavern Bat in that build and play Innkeeper's Talent after and pump, just being able to take a card and attack with a 2/2 lifelinking bat is similar to Rafine in Esper midrange. And so, like, I think it's consistent enough that I would go for that type of a build. Whether or not I would play Shieldred in the main or sideboard is a different story, because there are a couple different 4-drops you could play in that spot. However, I think that some decks, including the aggressive red decks, are getting smarter to play cards like Obliterating Bolt, to be able to destroy Glissa, exile Aklazats, and it also deals with the mouse.
Exiles the Mosswood Dread Knight as well, which is a big deal.
Yep. Yeah,
it's huge.
Hey, you know what? Torch the Tower. I'd be playing Boros midrange. And that's why they're playing 4 Torch. That does all the things you just said for 1 mana. That's gross. Assuming you can bargain or whatever, but you have a million, or your Brask's Forge token. I think I would try that Boros deck, and I have not even had a chance to play this yet, but that deck fascinates me. That looks very well positioned right now. But Innkeeper's Talent's so busted. I think you're absolutely right. Golgari has got to be one of the top 3 decks right now. I think in Standard, especially these other decks seem so rough. They're still figuring out what they want to do and everything, but.
Well, and Golgari's so deep. I mean, you can't go wrong, like honestly. And you could even build a very mid-range package a lot of different ways. So you know exactly it's like you could see 10 people bring in Golgari mid-range to a tournament, and you'll see 8 different 75s. It's kind of nuts.
The 3-drop slot. The 3-drop slot is crazy. It's impossible to narrow down what should I be playing. I can't play all these 3-drops. There's so many good 3-drops you could be playing.
Yeah. How many glitzes? Because you're not cutting Preacher the Schism, but
Preachers, Gix.
Preachers, Liliana's
so
mixed Gix is here.
Liliana,
it's bonkers.
Sentinel, the Nameless City.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, just a wealth of options. Yep.
So nice. A good smorgasbord of decks. A smattering of different archetypes.
I told you, Standard is healthy.
It's a good time
it's healthy.
to be playing Standard. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's in stark contrast to every other format, which is an absolute gong show right now.
Isn't it amazing that Standard feels more stable than Modern right now? What's up with that?
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
when they rotate those formats, crazy stuff happens.
Here we are.
However, more importantly, there's a big question of the week that we need your expert opinions on.
Okay.
Here we go. Are you ready? Okay, so these guys have not heard this yet, of course. Okay, if you were Mark Rosewater, which plane would you go back to for the next set, and why? Or 2-part question, would you make a new plane, and what would it be? Is there a plane that you feel like that we haven't been to that you could have envisioned being a great kind of thematic thing to do, or would you go back to the plane we've been to, and which one would it be? Think about that for a minute. I don't know if I would do it as like a next set, or because we're planned. But if I could go back to a world, I want an expansion on New Capenna, because there was so many unanswered questions there in the story. New Capenna was framed as a city. I want to know what plane it's on, because that matters lore wise. So the plane is. What is the plane called that it's on? Did they ever say the name?
No,
you're saying
it was just New Capenna. Here's the city that exists.
Yeah, and it's a city, and apparently it's wasteland outside of the city, but we don't
know where it is.
We don't know where it is. We don't know what's going on out there. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So for lore reasons, you'd like to go back there.
I love to go back there. I think that even just as the city of New Capenna, mechanically, the different mechanics that were in the set between connive. I thought that was a fantastic mechanic, even though busted with Rafine, so don't reprint that card. And taking a look at the different wedges again was very nice to have.
The Tri-lands are pretty great.
Tri-lands are great.
Tri-lands. The Sack-lands ended up being insane.
It's sort of for that same reason I wish we eventually would go back to Ikoria, because again, wedges, dinosaurs, hello. But yeah, I really want expansion on New Capenna. I want to know where that is, why they only focused in on one city, that thematically could have just had the same things going on as Ravnica, given the murder concept in Karlov Manor. Why didn't that just happen on Capenna? Why do we have to go back to Ravnica?
It's weird. I know.
Was very strange to me. But yeah, I would go back to Capenna.
They could maybe take another shot at rectifying that limited format too, because it was a stinker, if I recall. So it'd be nice if they could make that better. But that's interesting. That is not what I expected. Okay, Ham, what do you say? Where are we going?
That's a great call out. You could do something very similar with Strixhaven. Because Arcavios, the plane that Strixhaven's on, we only saw one very small portion of it. So there's a lot of more there to explore. I believe Rosewater has touched on that. I think that's something that they are planning on doing at some point.
Going back to,
before too long, going back to Arcavios. So cool. Like, we're going to get that. What I'm curious about, and I do not have the nostalgia chops to really lean into this, but I am wondering, lore-wise, could we get an actual paper set on Chandalar?
Chandalar?
Chandalar was the set that the video game from like 97 was set on.
Yeah. Is it a plane? Chandelar?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just a place in Dominaria or something that they were doing for the game.
According to the wiki, Chandelar is a rogue plane drifting through the multiverse instead of retaining a steady position or course. It is a relatively small plane, but incredibly rich in mana. The magical energy is so prevalent that it all is sentient, and the common people use minor spells as an everyday convenience. So it's a super concentrated magic. Like you could do some interesting things with that. I wonder. I don't know that we'd ever see it, but I can't help but wonder: is that something that is still in play as far as the current creative team is concerned?
Yeah.
Well, didn't we have that one creature in the core set? It was
Soul of Chandelar.
Soul of Chandelar. Yes. That was in a core set, and then they never went back to the plane at all. It was just like, here's this Avatar mythic in a core set that just makes reference to this zone and nothing else.
And there wasn't the invasion of Chandelar in March of the Machine was a thing. It was a green card.
Invasion of Chandelar. Okay.
Yeah. My OBS isn't going to show it. Yeah.
Damn.
So this little guy.
And tell me, for some reason, we go back there for March of the Machine, but somehow in March of the Machine never makes reference to Bloomburrow.
Yeah.
Never. Not once, even though we knew it was a future set coming up. Why didn't the Phyrexians go there? Hello? Where's the lore?
I hope there's an in-universe reason for that. Yeah,
I want to know why.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, so I never played the game, but it's one of those that I've been meaning to get to at some point. I don't know. Playing it's funny, watching old movies is, just fine. Reading old books is great. They age perfectly. Playing old video games can be really rough sometimes because the modern day conveniences that we have not being present. I don't know. I've gotten really addicted to my autosave. You just don't give me my autosave anymore. It's bad. So anyway,
nice
graphics technology, all that. But I would like to. I want to experience Chandelar. I want to figure out what's going on because it's a part of Magic's history. You could say the same thing about like Segovia or. There are a lot of old planes that are referenced that we haven't really spent much time on. I would love to really do deep dives and figure out, okay, what the heck is really going on there?
Which plane was Jace from in that core set when they had the Origin Planeswalkers? What was
Vryn?
Yeah, Vryn. That's what my answer was gonna be, which is that's another one that's kind of in the same vein where I remember hearing about it. I'm like, oh, Jace has like a home world. What is that like? And I wanted to, and there was a Sphinx in that set that was tied to his lore, but we never really got any. We never even, I don't know anything about it. There were the mage rings, and I thought, oh, that's super cool. These rings. I'm like, what kind of world is this? And then we never heard anything about it after that. So there was no invasion of Vryn. There was nothing. So
there was.
Oh, was there an invasion of Vryn?
Yeah,
Vryn got invaded.
Never mind. Can I see? I don't remember because there were so many invasions.
Actually,
and most of them were unplayable.
Pretty forgettable card. It was a.
Okay. Then
blue,
uncommon. Yeah,
blue uncommon.
Totally
ETBs draw 3, discard a card, and then it turned into the overloaded mage ring.
Jace's parents live, but the Kenriths die. What's up with that?
I know. Come on.
Okay.
Well, fun fact: we do.
You guys are Vorthoses. I don't know any of this lore.
But in the follow-up, in the epilogue chapters of Outlaws of Thunder Junction, there are scenes set on Vryn. We don't really get to see the plane very much, but we do get to meet Jace's mom.
Interesting.
That was she's
pretty
cool.
Jace tries selling, or I'm sorry, there's a whole scene where like Jace and Jace's mom are talking about Vraska. Like, who is this? And I think Jace refers to Vraska as his wife at one point.
Yeah, I think she the mom asks like, "Is this your wife?" or something, and and he says something to the effect of, "She's my everything" or "She's my world" or something really corny. But I got to be honest, I was like, "Oh, that's sweet," yeah. Well, and it's funny because at one point, the other thing that happens in that dialogue, which I have to mention because it's so funny that it actually was written down, was she asked like, "Do you guys have kids?" And Vraska said something to the effect of, "I don't know if we could," and Jace is like, "Yeah, we would know by now." Like he basically just looked at his mom and was like, "Yeah, no, we have a lot of sex." Like,
oh yeah, Very awkward.
Jesus.
It was like, I can't believe that actually made it into this story, guys. Like, what is this? What is even happening right now?
And then they show up, on Thunder Junction and they steal a kid. Like, hello.
And then they say exactly, and they take a kid. So,
in second thought, maybe I don't want to go to Bryn. Never mind. Anyway, but that's interesting.
Checking out Bryn would be very interesting. I'm definitely curious what's going on there.
Or a new plane.
I mean, okay, we talked about the wacky races. You cannot tell me that they are not going to flip a Mario Kart through one of those mage rings. I mean, come on, it's right there.
You know they give you a turbo boost when you go through them. Like they rocket you forward. Anyway, but good to know. So
good stuff.
Capenna, Vryn, and Chandelar. That's
curious.
All right, was there anything else?
There's a lot of stuff out there. Well, and so many more themes that they could build new planes on, and they're going to. So good stuff.
Yeah, and a lot more stuff happening in the Magic world as well. Yeah, we'll hopefully come up with a good one next week. But so many things we could have talked about, but we didn't. I dare not mention them now at the end of the podcast, lest we go for another 45 minutes. But the $50,000 dark ritual story, you guys heard about that? Holy cow, the drama. That's a whole thing. Maybe we can talk about it next week, and prize splitting. And we touched on this kind of stuff before, but it seems like every week there's something insane happening, and it's just like, oh my god. Yeah, it's wild. So tune in next week when we have the latest gossip and drama from the Magic the Gathering world.
Like and subscribe so you get notified.
You guys want to go? Where can they find you, Ham? Ham, do you want to lead it off this time?
I can. Twitch.tv/HamHawks42. I'm over there streaming Monday through Friday in the mornings, Eastern Standard Time. It's a ton of fun. I'm also over on the YouTubes. That if you want to see that Golgari combo deck, I actually did recently post a deck about it. So there'll be a link for that if you want to check it out. With gameplay from the stream and all that jazz. And HamHawks42 on all the places. Quick Google search, you'll find me at all the social medias and whatnot. The link tree's linked in the description. Yeah. And
for Redo, how about you?
Next?
So you can find me. I'm streaming live on Twitch 4 to 5 nights a week, mostly playing standard, fewer brews and stuff like that on the ladder. Also a part of the MTGO creator program, so you might see some more videos going up on my YouTube channel, playing in some standard leagues of some of these decks. But also you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, I guess that's the thing. TikTok, all the same handle, at @CFavretto_Jr. Luna always is joining me here as a co-streamer when we're live streaming on Twitch.
She's so cute.
Thank you for your input there.
Got a shout out
for
Luna,
your input. And
she heard her name. That's great. Nice. Same with me. I'm 6 days a week streaming on Twitch every single day, Monday to Friday, all Magic. These days we're dabbling in some other stuff. We just played Knock on the Coffin Lid, which is a very sweet Slay the Spire plus Darkest Dungeon type of game that I recommend you guys check out if you're into those kind of things. A lot of Magic players play these, they're card deck building battling games. Slay the Spire, I'm pretty sure everybody knows. So but streaming on Twitch, Damien F16, and then YouTube, Damien F16 for all the non-Magic games, daily uploads, Damien F16_Magic for all the Magic uploads. 2 YouTube channels. You can subscribe to both. They're both hopefully getting daily updates, but boy, is it tough to continually put two videos a day. I don't use any of the social media though. No Twitter, no Instagram, no TikTok. I have profiles and all that stuff, but I just can't constantly be updating that. I don't know how you guys
we'll
do
get
it.
Damien
Shorts and everything
on TikTok soon. Don't worry.
Oh dear God, we'll see. We'll see. But with that,
awesome.
I think we have to wrap it up.
But yes, thank you everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.
Take care. Bye.